Securities and advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates, Inc., member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. Insurance offered through the Monteverde Group, LLC, not affiliated with Royal Alliance. The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of WWVA Radio or iHeartMedia and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risk, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice.
Now here's your host, Steve Major.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. And as usual, I'm joined by Jason Haswell of the Monteverde Group. Jason, I don't think we have any pizza to offer, but probably some pretty good investment advice.
Yeah, I kind of wish we had some pizza.
This early in the morning?
Well,
yeah. All right. A little later on, of course, we'll give you a phone number to call if you'd like to call and ask Jason a question. In the meantime, our subject today is fixed income investing. Wow. Fixed income investing. I guess the first question would be, what are the different kinds of fixed income investing?
Well, there are many out there. The reason I like this topic today, we've gone over the market a lot and talked about volatility, and we talked about ETFs and mutual funds. And I thought, a lot of people, prefer to stick to maybe bonds or CDs or different things like that. So I thought we'd do this today. And there are various types of fixed income out there. You have government bonds, which people are used to using, treasury notes, treasury bonds, things like that. Savings bonds. We probably all grew up with our grandparents buying us a savings bond.
Absolutely.
For holidays and birthdays and the like. But you also have corporate bonds, which are debt issued by corporations all around the world in order to finance projects for themselves. You have, something a lot of people don't realize are senior loans, which are senior loans from banks that are collateralized typically, that you can invest in, and they tend to adjust with rates a little better than maybe longer term bonds do. You have floating rate securities, which are very short term implements out there that are issued by corporations. You have municipal bonds, which are bonds issued by municipalities, such as the city of Wheeling or state of West Virginia. They often pay for schools, roads, hospitals. The benefit of a municipal bond is that if you buy it in the state of residence, you don't pay federal or state income tax on municipal bonds, which a lot of retirees use them because they love them for the tax element. Of course, you have things like certificates of deposit or CDs that you see at your banks and things like that are guaranteed by the bank. You put it in for a certain period of time and you get a certain rate of return. You have money market funds, which are basically cash funds, similar to a checking account. You get the rate of return there is virtually non-existent. I think over the last few years especially, people have struggled with all of these because rates have been low for probably the most extended period of time they've been in a long time, because the Fed has kept rates low. They've started to move them up here over the last year roughly, but rates have been rough, and it's tough for retirees especially because they're relying on a lot of these implements to pay their income and supplement what they need to pay their bills every month. So there are a lot of different things out there that you can invest in. It's just a matter of what your risk tolerance is, what your time horizon is, because when you're looking at different bond classes, each one has different time frames. So you could do, a 3-month bond, a 1 year, a 5 year, a 10 year, a 30 year. And the problem is there is risk involved with the longer, if you lock in a rate with one of these, whether it be a corporate bond or a government bond or a municipal bond, if you lock in a rate and it's at a lower level and you lock it in for 30 years and rates go up, you're now stuck at that rate. And, there are newer bonds being issued at a higher rate, which means the bonds that you own are lower in value because there's less value for them in the market. If you have a 10-year bond that you buy for, let's just say, for the sake of argument, 2.5%, and they are now issuing bonds a year later, a 10-year bond at 3%, which bond is going to be in the open market? The 3% bond is going to take precedence. So your bond is now worth less. So if you need to sell it, you're probably going to sell it for less money. If you hold it to maturity, you will get all your money back. So, but you have to hold that now for 10 years. So you have interest rate risk as well as risk of time in those different bonds.
Getting back to what you were talking about initially, all the different types of ways.
Sure.
Fixed income. Obviously, what might work for you may not work for me.
Exactly.
And I think this probably is where you and your group come in. You got to sit down and say, okay, here's 10 ways to go.
Yes.
We got to figure out for you which of those 10 ways is best, whether it be 1, 2, or whatever the case might be.
Exactly. It's a very good point. And what we do, just like we do with stocks, we build an allocated portfolio with, we do that with equities. And when we do it with an equity, we're buying large cap, small cap, mid cap,
right,
foreign stocks, different things like that. Maybe mixing in a few sectors that we like. With bonds, you're looking at how much, based on the risk tolerance of the client in that allocated portfolio, how much should be in bonds, or fixed income, I should say, in that portfolio. Do they need a 40% allocation to bonds, a 60% allocation to stocks? Do they need 50-50? If they want more risk, maybe it's 80-20 stock to bond. That is going to vary based on, we've talked about this on shows before. Clients are like snowflakes, as I like to say. Everybody's different.
Right.
So we're going to base that allocation on what their risk tolerance objective goals are. And we're going to base the kinds of bonds we put in there based on their tax situation, what kind of yields they're looking for, time horizon, risk, things like that. So just like you diversify a portfolio of stocks or equities, you diversify a portfolio of bonds. You use some corporates, maybe some governments, maybe some senior loan. You diversify that based on the current rate situation, things like that. So each person is going to have a little bit of a different mix based on, what they come in and tell us their needs are, and we will adjust that. And we have software where we can go in and scan the whole bond universe for yield, time horizon, risk, credit rating. We can scan for all that. So we're going to pick a grouping of bonds that fit certain, basically qualifications that we have to own those bonds in your portfolio. But there are thousands of bonds out there. I mean, literally thousands in our inventory on a daily basis.
And this is where, again, you and your group come in, because the average Joe is not going to be I would assume the average Joe, he or she is not really going to know about these thousands of bonds and what they bring,
If you're buying individual bonds, now you can buy bonds through an ETF like we've talked about before, or a mutual fund. But the problem with that is there's no time horizon. So you can buy and sell them, but there's no set maturity for a mutual fund or an ETF. So with a regular bond, a straight individual bond, you have a maturity. You're going to get your money back at some point, based on the credit quality of the individual that's issuing the bond, whether it be a corporation or the U.S. government. But, so the individual bond portfolio, if you're looking for individual bonds, we use them quite a bit. It's difficult. You don't know what's out there, because you can't just go into, with today's, world and technology, you can pull up information on almost any individual stock you want and do research. You can't do that for a bond. You can't go out there and type in, I want to see every U.S. government bond. There's no inventory for them to look at. So we can do that research. Bond research is sometimes, in my opinion, more difficult than stock research, because there are so many out there and you have to adjust it based on time horizon, credit quality, all that. So, we put that time in. We do a lot of work with bonds, and you need to do that in order to diversify portfolios properly.
One of the key words you keep mentioning, though, throughout all this is risk.
Yep.
And define it. I mean, when it comes to investment.
With stock, what the risks are.
Yeah.
It's either going to go up, it's going to go down. The company could have issues. It could have earnings problems. It could have a lawsuit. It could have a product go bad. But with a stock, it's up and down. It's based on the market. With bonds, there are varying kinds of risk. There's credit risk, which is based on, the issuing company of that bond or the issuing government of that bond. What kind of risk? Like the U.S. government, naturally stands behind bonds. They are very safe. The safest investment out there, and other countries buy our bonds because of their safety. But when you get into corporations, each corporation is rated by Standard & Poor's or Moody's or whoever it is based on their credit quality. for example, a company like, Coca-Cola is going to have a very highly rated bond. You're going to be up in the A level, double A, A, single A. They're going to be very, very safe. Coke's not going anywhere anytime soon. Now, a company that maybe has more risk, a tech company or a company that's newer or smaller issuing bonds, is going to have lesser credit quality because there is more risk there. So there's credit risk based on who's issuing that bond and their ability to pay that bond back. There's interest rate risk, which means if rates move up or down, it could affect the value of your bonds, like we just spoke about here a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot of different varying risks with bonds. There's time risk in the fact that if you put it in, like we spoke about earlier, for 5 years or 10 years or 30 years, and those rates move around, you're stuck with a bond that maybe is paying a little less than what's out in the market now. So there are varying types of risk with fixed income, and there are a lot of different metrics that we use to look at that. What is the duration of the bond? What is the current yield of the bond? What is the price of the bond? Things like that. And that research, like I said, we can do it, but it's very difficult for the individual to.
Sure. All right. Ready to take a break here. And when we come back, we'll give you a phone number to call if you would like to ask Jason a question concerning our topic today, which, again, is income investing, fixed income investing. We'll give you the number right after the break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Trust is beautiful, intangible, and invaluable. In relationships, trust is earned. It is the knowledge that you can completely rely on someone who puts your well-being and best interests first. At the Monteverdi Group, we earn our clients' trust by helping them create a plan that can allow them to reach greater financial heights. Wealth management for today, financial independence for tomorrow. Call Jason Haswell at the Monteverdi Group, helping clients grow, manage, and preserve wealth.
This report is brought to you by Indeed.com.
News Radio 1170 WWVA. Severe Weather Team 9 forecast.
Rain is likely Saturday, morning high in the mid-50s. Temperatures fall into the mid-40s Saturday afternoon. And we'll see a high of 45 Sunday with a cloudy sky and a stray shower. I'm Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Jeff Exline.
Are you hiring? Join over 3 million businesses that use Indeed.com for hiring. You can post a job in minutes and manage your candidates from an easy-to-use dashboard. Post your next job on the world's #1 job site, Indeed.com.
iHeartRadio is the easy-to-use app for music and radio. Download the free iHeartRadio app today.
Refreshing your news feed at the top and bottom of the hour and posting opinions the rest of the time. News Radio 1170 WWVA.
1-800-624-1170. That's 1-800-624-1170 is the number to call if you'd like to ask Jason a question concerning today's topic, fixed income investing. He'll be glad to answer. Basically, we're talking about bonds here, and I guess how are bonds either guaranteed or not guaranteed?
Like we were speaking about earlier, there's a number of different ways that they can be guaranteed. I mean, through the federal government, they're backed by the full credit quality of the U.S. government. Okay. And I think, right now people would probably disagree on how good that is or how bad that is based on your opinion of the federal government. However, the government is the safest entity out there. You see a lot of foreign countries that buy our bonds because they are safer than their own. They're the safest investment of the world. So government bonds are exceptionally safe. I mean, they're one of the safest investments out there, if not the safest. You have, like we spoke about CDs earlier, CDs are backed by the bank and by the FDIC. They're guaranteed that they're going to pay you a certain rate of return for a certain period of time. They're backed by the bank and the FDIC, the government again. So you're again, protected there. Now, when you get into things like corporate bonds, they are issued by corporations and they are backed by that corporation individually. So, when you're looking, there are varying sources of risk or not risk with those bonds, with corporate bonds, because if you got a corporation that's done well for years, you typically don't have anything to worry about. They're probably going to have a single A rating, and if you're like we said, just before the break, whether it's a Coke or a General Electric or somebody like that, they're backed by that company. Now, not to say that there hasn't been companies that have gone out of business and not paid those. I mean, you look at companies like, you had Enron a few years ago. You've had some of those where you've had fraud and things like that. But typically they do their research. Moody's, Standard & Poor's, some of these others do their research to make sure these companies are, ranked or rated the proper way. They look at the company. They now, again, there could be determining factors that they don't see, but they're rated, and then you can buy those bonds based on their credit rating. Senior loans, I just spoke about. Senior loans are things that are loans that banks hold that you can buy a portfolio of, that are collateralized by either securities, real estate, cash, that are the highest quality loans that banks own, and you can get a yield off of those. Now, those are also good in a rising rate environment because senior loans adjust with 90-day LIBOR, meaning as rates go up, they will adjust, as all loans do that are on a variable rate. They can go up in yield or go up in rate or yield, and they tend to have less risk in a rising rate environment because of those adjustments. Whereas we spoke about earlier, bonds, when rates rise, if you own a lower rated bond, then you're going to lose some value on that in the short term. With these, as rates rise, they actually go up because they are adjusting with that as the bank adjusts the rates on the loans. And they're safe based on the collateral that the bank has, or safer. But and then you have things like money market, which has very little, if any, risk. Municipal bonds, as we spoke about earlier, have the double tax free if you buy them in your state. But municipals are backed by the municipality itself, whether it be the state of West Virginia, whether it be, maybe WVU, something like that. Or you see bonds that you vote on all the time, like road bonds and things like that. They are backed by the municipality or the entity. And a lot of those, you look at general obligation bonds, are funded through tax revenue. So there's very little risk there because that tax revenue is going to consistently come through, and they fund the bond. So municipals are often looked at, and they are rated just like any other. They have a double A, single A, triple B, whatever the rating may be on those bonds. They have a credit rating. So you can look at the credit rating, look at the municipality or the entity to see what kind of risks you have there and make some judgments.
You talk about credit rating on bonds. How actually does the credit rating work on bonds?
Those companies that I spoke about, whether it be Moody's or Standard & Poor's, they look at the company and then can raise and lower those credit ratings based on the solvency, the backing of the entity that issues the bond. They are doing research into that. They are looking at, the financials, the balance sheets, all the ifs, ands, and buts, so to speak, of what those credit ratings are, or what is their ability to pay. Just like a bank looks at you or I when we buy a house, what's our ability to pay? Right. What kind of credit risk are we? They are looking at those entities, whether it be a municipality or a corporation, as to their ability to pay and their, consistency of cash flow, their consistency of earnings, whatever it may be. And then they rank that. And if things change, they will raise or lower that credit rating as time goes on.
You've actually seen where a person perhaps will go in to buy a car and come out shaking his or her head because they said, "Oh, I'm afraid your credit rating is not too good."
Right.
And a lot of people go away and say, "Gee, I wasn't aware that's a factor here."
Oh, well, and that's actually a great analogy because it's very similar with this. It's an entity, just like we are, and our credit rating may be good or bad based on maybe we made a late payment, maybe we missed the payment.
Right.
Did this corporation or municipality, have they paid on their bonds in the past? Have they consistently paid, over time? Do they have the wherewithal, tax revenues, whatever it may be, earnings in case of a corporate bond to pay these, and how consistent has that been? And they look at all that, and then they rate you based on those things. So it's very similar to one of us going in to get a loan as an individual. They're
Right.
just and like I said, your credit rating may be poor today, and then a year from now things get better. You make some payments, things look good, you're consistent, and they may change that rating for the positive or, unfortunately, for the negative.
Have you heard where a credit rating can be affected by the fact that you did send a payment in, but it hasn't yet crossed the desk, so to speak,
right?
And as a result, it hasn't, reflected that in the rating itself,
right?
Once it does, it's like, oh, that went up all of a sudden.
Well, in the same way with a corporation or municipality, if they have debt or things that have not been good in the past, but they catch up on it or things get better, then the rating companies will adjust that. Will adjust it accordingly. And there is, like with municipal bonds, they have insurance. They can be insured,
right?
Meaning you're backed there as well. So, like I said, in some cases, really high quality municipals. If you have a city that's been very good at paying on their municipal debt and has good revenue and maybe backed by a tax revenue bond, you may have a bond in a municipal bond that's insured and backed by a certain insurance company.
1-800-624-1170 if you'd like to call Jason, ask him a question. How do the fixed income investments, I guess, how do you allocate them in your portfolio?
Again, it's with, each person is different. A lot of the allocation we do is going to be based on their overall risk tolerance, how much income they need off the portfolio, if any. We may vary the investment or the types, I should say, of fixed income investments in the portfolio based on the level of current income they need. So it's going to be different for each person. If we're looking, let's say, at a retiree, naturally we're going to have a little more in the bond side than we do with an average person growing their portfolio. I mean, if you're 35, we're probably going to have a smaller allocation to bonds or fixed income than we do with somebody who's 60, because the person at 60 is going to be closer to retirement. They are going to want to take a little less risk. They are going to probably need some current income within a few years or maybe at that time. So we're going to vary that risk based on what they need, at that age. Mm-hmm. When you're 35, you don't need as much in fixed income. It may be when you're 60, we do a 60-40 allocation. When you're 35, we may do a 70-30 or an 80-20 allocation, stock to bond, to grow the portfolio faster. Plus, when you're older, if the market the stock market would sort of have a bad couple of years or, have maybe an incident like we did back in 08, 09, you don't have the time at age 60 to grow that money back like you do at age 35. If you have a bad year when you're 35, you still have 30 years to maybe get it to where you need it to be. If you're 60, you only got maybe 5 years. It makes a difference. So we use bonds basically to help lower the risk and maintain a current income in the portfolio, especially when folks are older, so that they don't have those peaks and valleys and they do have that more consistency of growth. Now, it may lower your overall performance because stocks may be doing better, but they too go hand in hand. You're going to have better, with a riskier investment, you're going to make more over time than you would with a more conservative investment. So you got to take the good with the bad.
Sure. Is it ever too late to invest?
I don't think so. No, I mean, it's funny. People ask me all the time. They talk about, well, when I get to be 80, I probably won't own. I probably won't own stocks anymore. And I have a lot of clients that have owned stocks their entire life. They wouldn't think to do anything else. They love them. They've made them money over. They make if you look at the returns on the markets, they've been better than anything else over that period of time, over a 40, 50, 60, 70-year period. So I think there's always time. You just have to look at what your time horizon is and what your goal is. I think there's never a time when you could say, no, I shouldn't invest in anything. Because, as we like to say, you want your money to work. You worked hard to get it. You want it to work hard for you. You just don't want it to sit stagnant. Now, it's going to be varying portfolios based on age, unless believe me, I've seen guys that are 75 and 80 years old that are more aggressive than people in their 20s because they love stocks and they understand them. But, each person's going to base that on risk and different things. But no, I think you can design a portfolio of varying assets allocated over a diversified number of things for any age. And even any time frame, you just have to be more careful. The shorter the time frame, the less risk you're going to have to take. But no, I don't think there's an age limit on that at all. Yeah.
And I remember, I think we discussed this before too. What are the things that the young people, millennials, need to do today is really sit down and say, I've got to talk to somebody.
Yes.
I've got to come up with a portfolio. I've got to come up with a savings plan of some sort. And I'm not sure that some of them get it, so to speak.
I saw a stat the other day on CNBC, and we did this show about 401ks and things like that. Remember a few weeks back?
We did.
And I saw a stat the other day that the median savings balance in a 401k in the United States today is $60,000, which means that that's with people age 55 and up. Okay. That means you have the bulk of our population with $60,000 basically in their main retirement vehicle to live off of. That's a little bit frightening. Yes. And the thing you have to remember, that's median, which means there are a lot of very large 401k balances. That's bringing up the average because there are also a lot of very low. So there are a lot of people who don't have virtually any savings whatsoever. So back to your point with the millennials, if you start early, it makes all the difference. And just talk to somebody and get something, started.
Right.
Exactly.
All right, you can do that by calling the Monteverde Group. They are located, of course, here in Wheeling, 2001 Main Street, Suite 402. That's in the Wagner Building. Their telephone number is 304-905-0641. Give them a call. Give them a visit. As Jason said, it's never too early to start, and it may be one of the best things you ever do.
Absolutely.
All right, we've run out of time. I guess next Saturday again, same time at 10 o'clock, right here on WWBA Radio. As always, go Mountaineers.
Let's go Mountaineers.
All right. See you next week.